What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out the brand new Amazement archetype that just got revealed coming out of Lightning Overdrive. It feels like it's been a little while since I've reviewed any cards on this channel. I've mainly just been focusing on the history videos, but this looks like a very cool archetype, and the artwork is just absolutely fantastic. Anyways, there are a bunch of cards, and because there are so many, I'm not going to read over the effects. I'm just going to summarize, but I will put the effects on the screen. Anyways, let's go ahead and paste some bills on this channel first, and then we'll break down the entire archetype. This video is brought to you by the Fatal Core trading card game. Fatal Core is without a doubt one of the hottest games around and is growing rapidly. Fatal Core is 100% completely free of purchases and is entirely crowdfunded. Fatal Core not only rewards players with experience and in-game currency just for playing, but even if you just want to log in and work on a deck, you'll be able to cash in on those sweet login bonuses. In fact, Fatal Core was so impressive, TheGamer.com wrote a full article praising it for its innovation. And Fatal Core, both competitors play simultaneously, so there is no advantage in going first and no winning because you want a die roll. Not only does this lead to more satisfying games, but battles are made even more engaging by the unique and exciting lead characters that all have special abilities, varying playstyles, as well as weaknesses. I've been playing Fatal Core a ton lately, and I think it's an absolute blast. I really think you're going to enjoy it. Sign up for Fatal Core today at fatalcoretcg.com or by using the link in the description below. And look out for the release on Steam early next year. So the Amazement archetype is really interesting because aesthetically it looks like Performapiles or maybe Fluffles. It's like real vibrant and colorful, and there are a lot of nods to other archetypes within Amazements like the FA and also like the Ghost Tricks. But I think this archetype is probably going to play more like Altergeist, where you really need the trap cards to get rolling, because in this archetype you want to be equipping the trap cards to your monsters and to your opponent's monsters, and the traps have different effects based on like what they're equipped to and whose turn it is and all types of crazy things like that. Anyways, the boss monster, you summon it like you would Multi-Faker, where if a trap card has been activated, you can summon it afterwards, after the resolution of that. It does not have to be your trap card, it can be your opponent's trap card. The boss monster also has built-in mash removal, which is interesting. You banish the traps from your graveyard, and then you get to target that many cards on the field and blow those up. I wish it didn't target, or maybe if it was going to target, like I would have maybe liked to see it be like a quick effect. That would have been kind of cool. It also does have the equipping built right into it with the second effect, where if your opponent normal summons or special summons a monster or any type of monsters, doesn't matter how many monsters at that time, you can go ahead and you can equip one of your traps to that card. So the boss monster basically kind of does everything for the archetype. So the bear really kind of tells you what the deck is about. When the bear is normal summon, it takes one of your attraction traps and it can equip it to one of your opponent's monsters, but also it can take one of the attraction traps on your opponent's monsters and it can equip it to one of your monsters. And as I said, a lot of the traps in the archetype have effects based on what monster they're on, or I guess like who the original controller of those monsters are. So if you're going to play this archetype, like this is going to be one of the central themes. The final monster is basically Altergeist Marionetta. The first effect is nearly identical to Marionetta. You just normal summon it, and then you're able to get one of your Amazement trap cards and just set it straight on your field. The second effect is very similar to the bear. It lets you take one of your Amazement trap cards that's like on your opponent's monster, and then you can put it to one of your monsters. That's a quick effect, which that can be kind of useful. Like if you have a trap card on one of your opponent's monsters, but you feel like you're either going to run that monster over, or maybe they're going to, link it away or get it off the field somehow, you might want to take that card and put it on your card, because then you might get yourself a nice little buff effect. Now, the Rota in this deck is absolutely crazy. I think it's nuts. It reminds me very much of Salaman Great Circle, and you get effects based on which player's turn it is. So if it's your turn, then you're going to get the basic, I guess you can call it Rota or Cleefort Scout effect. You pay 800 life points, and then you get to search any Amazement card in your deck, which is basically going to be any of the spells or any of the monsters. So that's pretty good in my opinion. But the other effect, where if it's your opponent's turn, then you can set any of the trap cards in this archetype on the field, and you can activate those cards during that turn. I mean, to me, that this card is just bonkers. I love the versatility you have in it. I mean, a Rota is always going to be pretty good in Yu-Gi-Oh, but then potentially having a disruptive card during your opponent's turn, that is also going to be very awesome. The next card, it's another quick play. I don't really like it that much. It's if your opponent targets one of your Amazement monsters, then you can target that card, return it to the hand, and then special summon an Amazement monster from your hand. I think that's maybe only good for getting like the boss monster out of your hand. I mean, I guess it kind of, it can avoid certain things. Like I know Dogmatica Punishment and Impermanence, like those are cards that are kind of popular in the meta, but it feels very specific. Like usually these cards that require targeting, they don't see a lot of actual competitive play. So this is probably like a 0 or 1 of in the archetype. Now, Konami doesn't build archetypes anymore that don't have field spells, so this was, in my opinion, to be expected. And the field spell allows you to activate one of your attraction trap cards the turn that you set it, which, I mean, that seems pretty good because, the Rota does that, and basically, like, having all of your trap cards potentially be, what is that, Phantom Shade of Brigadine? Like, having all your cards just be able to be activated immediately is always a very good thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! So that is obviously going to be, like, a very big benefit to this deck. The second effect of the field spell is kind of like swapping out your attraction traps for different ones. Basically, during your end phase, you can send one of your attraction trap cards that's on a monster to the graveyard, and then you kind of swap it out with a different one that's either banished or in your graveyard, and you set that card in your spell and trap zone. That's cool. I think I would have maybe rather liked the card like the Prank Kids card where you're shuffling back a few of them and then you end up drawing a card. I feel like that would have been a little better. I kind of get the fact that if you're setting it on your field during the end phase, you get to use that trap card immediately, but the traps in this archetype aren't overly powerful. Like, they're not as strong as you would imagine, honestly. Now, the first trap card is actually pretty darn good, and it's basically Crackdown for the Amazement archetype. It's almost identical to Crackdown, actually. If your opponent has a monster that has an attraction trap equipped to it, you basically just take that monster, and then that monster gains 500 attack. Just like Crackdown, that monster can't activate its effects, but you can actually still attack, so you can beat the crap out of your opponent. This feels like legitimate disruption, because now you're equipping, these traps to your opponent's monsters, and you're not just doing it for no reason. You can now just like take the monsters. If it didn't target, it would have been bonkers, but the fact that you get to take your opponent's monster, you can still attack with it, and the monster gets progressively stronger, that's pretty legitimate in my book. Now, to net this roller coaster card is really interesting because they put 2 utility effects into this card. You're either going to be able to get like an MST, or you're going to be able to get a Rota Search, and that's going to be completely dependent on whose monster you put it on, because again, with these attraction trap cards, you can put them on your monsters, your opponent's monsters, and you get completely different effects. So if you put it on your monster, then you're going to get an MST at the cost of blowing the trap up itself. If you put it on your opponent's monster, then you're going to blow it up and you're going to get a Rota Search. I think probably the MST effect is going to be more useful. I think during my opponent's turn, I don't generally want to be searching monsters unless I have to. I probably want to be disrupting them, and a lot of times an MST can be fairly disruptive, but I'm not going to downplay the fact that you could get a potential Rota Search that, maybe you summon the boss monster or something like that. Maybe there's a play there, but I think it's a pretty okay card. Like, if it's going to be your primary spell and trap removal, I think that's fairly legitimate. The Ojama Ferris wheel card just honestly feels kind of troll in my opinion. As with the other attraction traps, again, you can put them on either monster, your opponent's or yours. If you put it on your monster, it's like okay, because you can take a card from your hand, put it at the bottom of your deck, and draw a card. So a nice little way of being able to maybe fix your hand. But if you put it on your opponent's monster, then it swaps their attack and defenses, which that's completely troll. I mean, this is Ojama trolling in 2020. Also, it doesn't work on Link monsters because they don't have defense. Like, I can't advocate playing this card unless you're strictly doing it for the Ojama memes. The 6 Samurai Carousel might actually be okay, because if you put it on your monster, that monster gains 500 attack, and then if it would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. So, kind of reminds me of some of like the Phantom Knight cards, like the Phantom Knight's Wings. Like, those cards, they're not actually that bad. Like, this could be legitimate. If you put it on your opponent's monster, monster, then it loses 500 attack for each attraction trap card that it has on it. I don't really know if that's going to be that good. It feels like you'd have to have maybe 2 or more to really kind of have a benefit. But the first effect, putting it on your monster, that actually feels like it can be good, especially if you put it on the boss monster of this archetype. The FA Go cards feel kind of underwhelming in my opinion, because if you put it on a monster that you control, then you get to potentially change its battle position, and you can shuffle a card in your opponent's like graveyard back to their deck. I mean, that's cool. It can maybe disrupt some plays. If you put it on a card your opponent controls, you reduce that monster's level by 1 and you change its battle position. Changing the monster's battle position can be okay, but honestly, like level changing, unless you're playing specifically against like maybe VW, just in the age of Reigns and, you know, with Zodiac and Xyz summoning coming back, I just don't know if that, you know, adjusting level is really going to matter that much. I kind of get if it would have maybe put the monster face down, but that would have conflicted with the fact that it's equipped. It would have, you know, the equipped card would have fell off, but it probably would have needed to be a Book of Moon type card, in my opinion, for it to be solid. The final card is the Ghost Trick Haunted House, and this is honestly just like a much better version of the FA Go cards because it has that Book of Moon effect that I was looking for if you put it on your opponent's monster. But if you put it on your monster, then you get an impermanence or you get like an effect veiler. We know that those type of cards are like good in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. They're probably going to continue to be good for years in the future, you know, negating your opponent's effect monsters, booking their monsters, putting them face down so that they can't Xyz summon or they can't use them for extra deck summons, etc., etc. This feels like it's probably going to be one of the better disruptions in this deck. Like, this is probably going to be, along with the Crackdown, these are probably going to be your main ways of disrupting your opponent. So I would play multiples of this card. Anyways, what do you guys think of the Amazement archetype? Definitely a very interesting design. It doesn't feel like anything we've seen previously. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already.